Calvina Fay, Executive Director, Drug Free America Foundation. Mike Stevens, Narcotics Detective, Orlando, Florida. Dr. Robert DuPont, Clinical Professor of Psychiatry at Georgetown Medical School. Robert O'Neill, Assistant U.S. Attorney. Dr. Eric Vogt, Chairman, Institute on Global Drug Policy and an Addiction Specialist. Peter Stoker, Director, National Drug Prevention Alliance. Shannon, 21-year-old recovering drug addict.
Okay, let's talk about what people know about marijuana, or what they think they know.
Oh yeah, people smoking the reefer.
No, seriously.
All right, people know it's a plant, a natural herb.
And if you smoke the buds, you get high.
It really is a social drug. Like a lot of people, it's everywhere at parties. It's everywhere, and everyone's all like, "Oh, I'm gonna get on that, yeah, sure," just so they can be part of the group.
About earlier.
Yeah, exactly.
Like
Social
that.
acceptance.
No one sees a problem with it anymore.
Well, the thing
Well,
is,
very
I don't
few
think
people
anyone does it honestly because
I think the thing about marijuana right now is why it's so widely accepted is because people are no longer ashamed to say that they smoke weed.
Yeah,
Exactly.
because like cool thing to do.
Yeah.
Society has become much more acceptable of marijuana use. It's been glamorized in movies, it's been glamorized on television shows. The media has really done a disservice to the public.
Right now, there is a large population or percentage of the United States that believes that marijuana is perfectly legal to smoke, and there's no reason why we shouldn't do it.
They've ignored the fact that it's addictive. They've ignored the fact that it's linked to various types of cancer and respiratory problems and other health issues. So that the media has really done a disservice to the public.
It's illegal though.
Not everywhere.
Some people say it's a medicine, and in some states it's legal to possess it for that same reason.
So which is it? I'm confused. How can it be legal in some states and not in others?
People sometimes will ask, is it legal to consume or possess marijuana? And the real easy answer is no. Many times people wonder about legalization and why is marijuana legal in some states, not in others, and not on a federal level. The main reason is every state has a different statutory legislature, and each state can pass their own laws. So you might find in certain states something like marijuana is legal, while in other states it is not. It is never legal at this point on the federal level.
I don't get the whole medical thing. How can smoking anything be considered healthy?
It can't. Can you think of any prescription that you can smoke?
Aren't there people with cancer and AIDS who are helped by smoking marijuana?
It says on the DEA site that medical marijuana does exist. It's a prescription called Marinol. It also says that smoked marijuana isn't approved by the FDA.
Think about it. Smoking anything would have to be dangerous to your health, like smoking cigarettes.
Yeah, smoking causes lung cancer, respiratory problems, emphysema.
It's important for young people to realize that marijuana is not medicine, and more importantly, that there's not some huge group of poor, untreated, suffering patients running around out there that marijuana is the only answer for.
One of the more interesting hoaxes in the drug field is the concept of medical marijuana. And I like to explain to people that burning leaves is not the way to take any medicine. It never has been, it never will be. It can't be. And that's because smoking is, by definition, unhealthy.
When it comes to comparing the health effects of marijuana and tobacco, I find that kind of funny in a way, because these are both plants with leaves on them. The leaves are processed, you roll them into a paper and you light them up and you smoke the fumes that come from them. And we're being told that tobacco is a deadly thing that you should never smoke at all. And at the same time we're being told that marijuana is highly beneficial medically and physically, and it's no big deal. And when you actually look at the real research as distinct from the flannel that legalizers dig out, you'll find, for example, that marijuana, the leaves of it are more carcinogenic. They have more cancer-causing agents in them than do the tobacco leaves.
you have damage to your lungs, you have damage to your respiratory system, you're at a greater risk for various kinds of cancer because actually marijuana cigarettes have more cancer-causing agents in them than the tobacco cigarette does.
There's 50% more tar in a joint than there is in a cigarette. It's a fact.
First of all, THC is available as a pill, and there are processes taking place in research right now to look at delivering pure THC as a medicine, either as an inhaler or as a medication patch on the skin.
Raw cannabis, the stuff as you grow it, as you get it off the plant, is no medicine. It's too variable. Its effects you can't guarantee. It has side effects which rate it very low compared to other drugs that are already on the market.
Marijuana smoke is hurtful to the body, so no credible medical organization is ever going to approve any smoked marijuana as a medicine for anything.
The whole idea of smoking pot is being driven by those people who want to legalize it. The whole idea that marijuana has a medical application is really a ruse. It's a Trojan horse to try to get particularly young people to think that somehow marijuana is no big deal, and if it can be used medically, why can't we smoke it for fun?
After the Netherlands legalized marijuana use for adults, the usage rate for 18 to 20-year-olds nearly tripled. It's a fact.
Pot isn't just about the smoking thing. It alters the way you think, your attention span, and your memory.
Yeah, not to mention damaged brain cells.
And it zaps your motivation and reaction time.
I've been looking for a chance to say this. I am a doctor. I see patients in my own practice, and I have for 35 years. A lot of them kids, a lot of them with drug problems. And what people who smoke marijuana tell me is that marijuana makes them stupid and lazy. I call it the careless drug. You lose your motivation.
One thing that is very strange about marijuana, and it's unlike any other drug of addiction, is that the user falls into kind of a cloud, and they really don't see their own situation. Most cocaine addicts or alcoholics or methamphetamine addicts know that their lives are terrible. But most of the people that are addicted to marijuana don't see that.
Other drugs, people will use the drugs and they'll have terrible things happen. With marijuana, oftentimes no terrible thing happens to them. They just lose their focus in their life. They don't care anymore. They don't care about their grades. They don't care about the athletic activities. They don't care about their families. That is the most common problem people have with marijuana, and it is devastating, especially for young people.
Well, I wouldn't want the pilot of my plane smoking a joint before takeoff.
I wouldn't want to get into a car with someone who's been smoking either.
And I will never, tell anyone that, yeah, they drive better stoned.
But it says here, 1 in 6 high school seniors drives under the influence of pot.
There's another problem that young people really need to seriously grapple with marijuana, and that is its effect on driving. It has very serious impairment effects on driving. A single joint can impair driving ability by as much as 20 to 30%.
I see wonderful kids who go on there and do this drunk driving, the red ribbon, I'm against drunk driving. My friend, 15-year-old, died from drunk driving. And they hate drunk drivers, and they're the biggest ones they'll get in front of you and tell you about drinking and driving. But then they go to a party and watch their friends smoke weed and get in the car and drive off. What's the difference, please?
The people who use drugs don't use them on an island somewhere and stay on that island until the drugs are out of their system. They get out, they go on our highways, they go into our workplaces, they go into our hospitals, our schools, and what have you, and they are affecting us as a society.
It's very clear that marijuana absolutely should never make it onto the road. It results in a lot of accidents, and in fact a lot of trauma and even fatal accidents have been marijuana related.
Marijuana affects depth perception. It affects judgment. It doesn't make you any quicker. If marijuana really affected you in a better way, then maybe we let all our astronauts smoke marijuana before they went up in space. Generally, we don't.
So why do people smoke pot if it's still so dangerous?
To get high, duh.
But it's not addictive.
If that's true, then why does the DEA say that more teens are in treatment for marijuana use than for any other drug or for alcohol?
It is the #1 drug that our young people are in treatment for today. We wouldn't have all those people in treatment if there wasn't a problem with addiction.
Marijuana is the leading reason teenagers are in treatment for drug problems. It is by far the most common. In fact, there are more teenagers in treatment for drug problems than for marijuana problems than all the other drugs put together.
60% of teenagers in drug treatment are there for marijuana addiction. It's a fact.
Marijuana is a drug that most people start out with.
It says here that people who use it are 9 times more likely to go on to use harder drugs.
If you hang out with people that smoke pot and do harder drugs, you're most likely to try harder drugs yourself.
One thing leads to another, and before you know it, you're in way too far.
They call it the gateway drug.
There is a term that a lot of drug specialists use, which is gateway effect. And what this means is that if you use one substance, you're more likely to use another one.
I'm an alcoholic and a drug addict. I took my first drink when I was 14. I smoked my first joint when I was 16. And I knew pretty much from the beginning that I liked the way that alcohol and drugs made me feel.
And marijuana is definitely a gateway substance. Two others that come into that category quite definitely are tobacco and alcohol.
Marijuana is a gateway drug because it is the most popular, the most commonly used illegal drug. If a young person does not use marijuana, the likelihood of that person using any other illegal drug is extremely low.
Had I not used marijuana, I would not have used cocaine, methamphetamines, painkillers.
What happens is the kids begin with marijuana. That's their first illegal drug that they use. It becomes a normal thing for them. It becomes socially acceptable. They start hanging out with other kids who are doing illegal drugs. And then it's an easy step for them to take to the next illegal drug.
Alcohol and drugs, namely marijuana, had become just a part of my life. It wasn't partying, it was functioning. So when it was time to party, I needed to look for something else.
But eventually, smoking marijuana gets kind of boring. I mean, at some point in time, you may want to try a different high. And that's when you see people move up to either geeking, maybe putting coke with their weed, maybe mixing it with something else, or moving to an entirely different drug.
Typically, their first illegal drug is marijuana. They hang out with other kids who are doing marijuana. They hang out with kids who are doing other illegal drugs, and this is the introduction into that world of illegal drugs.
It's the foot in the door, and that's exactly what it is. It's just the starting point, first step on the ladder. No guarantee the person's going to go up the ladder, might get off of the first rung, but from my experience talking to people, that is the first step, and usually it makes taking the second, third, and fourth step up the ladder a lot easier.
Marijuana users are 8 times more likely to use cocaine and 15 times more likely to use heroin. Still sound harmless? It's a fact.
You wouldn't think marijuana would be so dangerous since it's natural.
Well, it's always been dangerous, but I mean, it's getting stronger nowadays.
The hydroponically grown pot is much stronger than your average marijuana.
What does that mean?
Basically, THC is the psychoactive component in marijuana, and there's a lot more of it in pot grown today than in the 60s and 70s.
The marijuana that's on the street today is a lot different than what was running around in the 60s and 70s. Over the years, there has been a lot of hybrid formation. The growers have learned how to grow plants that have higher amounts of THC in it. So the THC concentrations now will vary anywhere from 5% to as high as 30%.
And the stronger grades that we have now of marijuana are particularly harmful. They're causing more psychoses, they're bringing out latent schizophrenia. We're finding that psychotic episodes are happening even with people who are not inclined or predisposed to mental problems.
I ended up becoming paranoid schizophrenic after a 2-week binge, and I was in the hospital for The first time, 8 days, and it happened 3 times. And by the last time, I was detoxing for 18 days. And, you know, here I am, 20 years old, you know, all-American athlete in college 1 minute, you know, suicidal, psychotic the next.
So all doctors pushing for medical marijuana are wrong?
Wrong, yes, but it's not doctors that are pushing it.
What do you mean?
Well, this says that they're not doctors, they're individual businessmen and legalization groups.
Dude, they want to make money.
Oh, I get it, like legal drug dealers.
Yeah, but there's more to it than that.
According to the DEA, they're pretty much aiming to legalize all Schedule I drugs.
What are Schedule I drugs?
Marijuana, crack cocaine, LSD, and even PCP.
Whoa.
Dude, imagine that. A country full of junkies.
You know, there's always a lot of talk about legalizing marijuana, and you question who's going to benefit from that. And it seems to me, and this is just my opinion, that only businesses would benefit.
We have 3 very wealthy businessmen in the country that would like to see not just marijuana, but all drugs legalized, and they finance these campaigns in these various states. They bought time on television and ran very misleading ads and totally misled the public.
There are some cigarette manufacturers, tobacco cigarette manufacturers, who already have plans drawn up for factories to make and distribute marijuana cigarettes if they were ever to get legalized. So there's a commercial benefit.
So money is the reason these people are trying to make smoking marijuana sound so harmless.
Exactly. Yeah, they probably want you to use drugs.
Well, after reading all about marijuana on the DFAF website, I don't want to smoke pot. I mean, it sounds pretty bad for you no matter what opportunists say.
When it comes to my health, I'll be talking to my doctor and not bankrolling some businessman.
So how do we separate fact from fiction when it comes to marijuana?
Well, it's hard when you think about it. It's everywhere.
It's almost like they're trying to get us used to it.
Like trying to desensitize us.
You know, I always said that that would be a recreational thing, and I had heard that marijuana wasn't addictive, so it wasn't a big deal, and that's the way I dealt with marijuana for a long time. I told myself that I was not addicted to it, and that because there's no physical withdrawal from it, that I could stop anytime that I wanted to.
A lot of young people really do choose to stay away from drugs. And one way that you can do this as an individual is to look at your friends. Look at who you run around with. If your friends are going to parties, getting intoxicated, doing stuff that you know is going to be problematic, you got to change your friends. You've got to change the people that you run around with.
The problem in my life was me, and I blamed my problems on everyone around me.
One of the things I like to say to people is, a way to tell whether something's good or not is, can you tell the people who love you the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth about it? If you apply that test to marijuana smoking, you will find you can't. You can't tell your teachers, you can't tell your parents, you can't tell your religious leaders, you can't tell a lot of your friends, hey, whenever you see something like that, don't do it.
I did drink, I did use other drugs, but marijuana certainly played the biggest role in leading me down my path, and I certainly was addicted to it. There was no doubt about that.
You can't take commercials and media hype at face value. You're smarter than that.
And you owe it to yourself to know where you stand and why.
Marijuana Survival Guide. Reject pop culture that promotes harmful marijuana use as normal. Although some state laws vary, possession and use of marijuana is against federal law. Marijuana has never been approved as a medicine by the FDA. Smoking marijuana causes lung disease and a host of respiratory problems. There are no FDA-approved medications that are smoked. Today's marijuana is 10 to 25 times stronger than that of the 60s. Marijuana impairs judgment and slows response time. Never get into a car with someone who has been smoking pot. Marijuana steals your judgment, memory, motivation, and future. Why let a drug take these from you?
Thank you.